Hi, my name is John Skupien. I'm an instructor here at Rock Valley College in the automotive department. I've been asked today to go over some introductory or basic information about an automobile that a new driver would benefit from. Anybody who is going to start driving a vehicle should be able to check the vehicle in a few basic ways. And so today I'm going to do a quick overview. We're going to check some fluids. Right, we want to make sure that the oil level is full, as well as some of the other fluids in our vehicle. We want to make sure our tires are full. So I want to show you how to check the pressure in your tires and how to determine what the proper pressure is. So once we've done that, then I will run you through how to actually change a tire on a vehicle. Oftentimes we're stuck on the side of the road with a flat tire, and so I'd like to take you through, at least on this particular vehicle, where the jack is located, how to safely change that tire, and get you to a repair facility. Generally speaking, we are not going to repair tires ourselves. We're going to take it to a shop, and they're going to either find the leak or and possibly plug it, or if the damage is beyond repair, then of course replace the tire. We don't want to drive on a temporary spare for very long. They are generally designed for limited mileage usage only, and so again, they're designed to get you from wherever you have the low tire situation to a repair facility that can correct the problem. So we'll start out by going over fluids on this particular vehicle. So the first thing we have to do is open the hood. In most cases, that's a very simple thing to do, but in many cases, a driver, especially a new driver, has not been shown how to do that. So I'm going to run you through that right now. So the lever for activating the hood latch is typically inside the vehicle, mounted down by the driver's what we call a kick panel. So down here, in this case, it's right here. So I'm going to pull this lever, and there is a slight popping noise under the hood. So the hood has now been unlatched, and we're going to go up to the front of the car and continue to open the hood. At this point, in most vehicles, there is another latch underneath. That's what we call a secondary latch. So the vehicle has two latches. So the first one is a safety latch. In the event that the hood were to come partially open, say that lever inside the vehicle was pulled. This is a safety that prevents the hood from opening as we're driving down the road. So we have to depress another lever, which again you would want to look at your owner's manual. In this case, it's a little lever right here. You can see what I'm activating with my finger, and we're going to lift the hood. There's also a prop rod that's going to hold the hood up, and in this case we place it into a slot over to the side, and that's what holds our hood up. So now we're going to check the oil. In this particular vehicle, the dipstick is this yellow handle right here. I know that because I've checked many vehicles in the past, but if you weren't sure which one it was, you could go to your owner's manual and look to see where the dipstick is for the engine oil. So you want to use a clean rag, and we're going to grab the dipstick, we're going to pull it out, and what we want to do is we want to wipe it clean initially, and then we're going to put it back in the dipstick tube until it seats fully. We're going to pull it back out again, and we're going to check the level. And I'm not sure if this will show up well on the camera, but basically we have two marks. We have a low mark and we have a full mark. We want to be in between there. And what you're going to see is the oil, it kind of reflects on the dipstick. So right now our oil level is right up here, so that's up toward the top, and that fluid level is okay. That's exactly what we want. The oil is nice and clean, so if you can barely see it on the dipstick, that's an indicator that you have very clean oil, and that's ideal. That's what we want. When we change our engine oil, that's to keep it in good shape. So the engine oil is what lubricates everything inside the engine, and if we don't keep it clean, we can have issues with various systems. It increases wear and will reduce the lifespan of that engine. So I've referred to the owner's manual in the vehicle. Typically where you're going to find the owner's manual is inside the glove box. So this manual will cover all the important features of the vehicle, how to operate all of the functions of the vehicle, as well as show us where the engine oil is located, right? Where the dipstick is located, how to check the engine oil, what type of oil it's supposed to use. It will give us instructions on how to change a tire, not necessarily how to repair the tire itself, but take the deflated tire off of the vehicle and we're going to replace it with the spare tire that is in the back. So again, this manual, it would be worthwhile to read through this manual and familiarize yourself with the vehicle. Obviously you want to be familiar with it before you start to drive the vehicle. If you don't have an owner's manual, sometimes you can buy old manuals online or you can buy them at the junkyard. So this one is made specifically for the vehicle and it should be for your particular vehicle. But there's a lot of great information in here. So I've just gone to the back of this manual and right here it says oil consumption, oil viscosity and grade, and so that's what we're after right now. So if I go to page 400, it basically shows us the same information that I just talked about. It shows you the low level on that dipstick, it shows you the full level on that dipstick, it gives you the procedure to get the correct reading. So you want to be on level ground. You want to make sure the vehicle is turned off. You're going to pull the dipstick out and you're going to hold the rag under the end and wipe it clean, reinsert it, push it in as far as it will go, and then pull the dipstick out. So exactly what I just went through, but here you have it written right in the manual for reference in the future. One of the features that they also cover in here is checking tire inflation pressure. So we can look on page 405 and it shows us where to find the tire inflation decal. So it is on the driver's side door and it's on a sticker right there in the door jamb. So I'll show you where that's at now. So in the driver's side door jamb is a decal. There's actually a couple of decals. So this decal up here is going to tell us all of the manufacturer information as far as the VIN number of the vehicle. Every vehicle has a unique 17-digit vehicle identification number, and so that's where that is housed, if you will. Then we come down to the next decal, and in this case, this gives me the tire size. It might be difficult to see on the video, but it's giving me original tire size. It's a P185 65R15. Then it's going to give me inflation. So in this case, the inflation is 35 psi for my front tires and 33 psi for my rear tires. So you have to be aware that in some cases these will be different readings. In this case, this is a hybrid, and so hybrid vehicles have a very heavy front end. The engine, the motor generators, that's a lot of weight. So they actually run more tire pressure in the front tires than they do in the back. So I'm going to check this tire. And basically the way we want to do that, there's a couple of options. We have the pencil style tire pressure gauges. That would be difficult to film, so I'm going to use a dial type gauge. So here we've got 20 psi going up to 40 psi at that second mark. So this particular tire, per the decal on the door, says needs 35 psi. This is a front tire. So I'm going to put the gauge on there. I'll push it against the valve stem, and it's reading just under 30 pounds. So this is a low tire. So I'm going to fill this. I'm connected to an air hose. You want to go in relatively small increments so you can control it. So right there between the 30 mark and the 40 mark on my dial, it should be 35 psi. So that tire is good. So I just release that and I put my valve stem cap back on, and that tire is now set to the proper pressure. I would want to go around and do all of the tires on the vehicle and make sure they are properly inflated. Other fluids that we'll want to check would be the brake fluid. In this case, it's on this side of the vehicle. In many cases, it's on the driver's side of the vehicle. But what we're looking for is we want it to be within this minimum to maximum range that's on the reservoir. And you only want to use the proper brake fluid in this vehicle. If you're not familiar with the types of brake fluid, I would recommend that you take the vehicle to a service center and have them top off your brake fluid. What you definitely do not want to do is put the wrong type of fluid inside the brake reservoir. If it's getting low, that's an indicator of wear in your brakes, or it's an indicator of a leak somewhere in the hydraulic system. And again, you would want to take that to a repair facility and have them find out where the brake fluid is going. But you always want to at least be aware of the level and make sure that that level is within a safe range there. Again, if it's not, you need to get the vehicle to a repair facility and find out why that level is not within the range. Another thing we want to check is coolant level. So in this case, you have a low coolant level, and on the side here is a high coolant level. We want to make sure that we stay within this range. Again, it's very specific to the vehicle as far as what type of coolant that it uses. And so if that is low, again, you want to go to a repair facility and find out where that coolant is going, because it should not be low. If it's low, that's usually an indicator of leakage, and that leakage can cause engine overheating, which would damage your engine. So if that level is low, you want to find out why. Again, if you're not familiar with it, take it to a repair facility. They will check the fluid. They can pressure test the system and let you know where that fluid is going. Same would go for the transmission fluid. In this case, the transmission does not have a dipstick. Some do, some do not. So we will not be checking the transmission fluid. Another fluid that most consumers could check would be their washer solvent. So in order to be able to wash the bugs off of our windshield, wash salt off of our windshield in the winter time, we want to make sure that we have adequate washer fluid in this bottle. In this case, you just want to make sure it's full, and there's different types of washer solvents depending on the time of year. If it's going to get extremely cold, there's some that have more of an antifreeze property into them and will resist freezing longer than, you know, a conventional blue type is not good for extremely cold weather, but for summertime and most of the year it's just fine. As far as tire repair goes, your spare tire is kind of hidden in the back of the vehicle in most cases. So in this particular vehicle, I would open the hatch, and it's actually going to be underneath this cover here. So I'm going to set this aside. This carpeting will pull up. So I just kind of fold that. I'm going to neatly set that out of the way. Then there's a cover. I have to unlock these two tabs. Again, all of this information should be in your owner's manual. So we'll lift this up, and I have to actually remove this panel. So there is a storage area underneath here, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to show you what's inside that cavity. So right there, this is our tire iron. This is the jack handle. So we have to figure out where they've put our jack now. Typically it's underneath this. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift this entire panel out. So I will back out with the camera so you can see what happens there. So I'm going to lift this housing out. Now I can see my spare tire. So right there, this is the spare tire itself. This is the jack assembly for lifting the vehicle up. So I'm going to remove both of those now. So this is rubber banded into place. And so you just, again, you'll have to check your owner's manual to find out how exactly they want you to remove this stuff. But the jack will lift out like so. I'm going to set that aside. And then the tire is held in by this nut. So I'm going to unscrew that nut. I'm going to remove it, but I need to hang on to it because I need to put the tire back in. So once I lift that out of there, that's basically your jack retainer, the holder for the jack during most normal usage. The tire should lift out, and I'm going to lift it out now. So the first thing we're going to need to do, and you'll have to bear with me and imagine this is a flat tire, but typically you would need to break your lug nuts loose first. What would happen if we jacked the car up first is this wheel would just spin, and it would be very difficult to break these lug nuts loose. These are torqued down typically in the 80 to 100 foot-pound range. So that's a lot of torque. And so it takes a fair amount of force to be able to break them loose. So the tire iron typically is a little bit on the longer side so that you have some leverage to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them on, and it is a situation where these are right-handed threads, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. You're going to try and turn them counterclockwise to break them loose. Now we can take advantage of gravity and our body weight and just kind of lean onto that lug nut, and so it breaks loose. Again, same thing with this one. I'm just going to push it down on the lug nut. I don't want to take them all the way off right now because the weight of the vehicle is still on this wheel. All I'm trying to do is crack them loose so that once I put the vehicle up in the air and I start spinning these lug nuts, they'll actually unthread. If they were still tight and I had the weight of the vehicle off of this tire, the whole tire assembly would spin and it would be very difficult to break the lug nuts loose. So I like to always break them loose on the ground first. Again, you're just leaning into it, break them all loose. You want to go in a crisscross pattern ideally. So I would start with this one. I would go in kind of a star pattern like so and work my way around. So I have loosened that one, I've loosened that one, this one still needs to be broken loose. Get that one. So that's all my lug nuts. That's as far as I want to go until I get the vehicle up on the jack, because this is still supporting the weight of the vehicle. If I take these lug nuts off now, the vehicle will be very unstable. The wheel could pop off, you could get hurt. So again, we're just trying to crack them loose so that we can spin them off once we get the vehicle up in the air. So now we have to look and see how the jack is set up. So this particular jack is set up so that the jack handle slips into the eyelet here, and as we spin it, it will crank the jack up and down. But first we need to find out where we were supposed to put this jack on the side of the vehicle, and again, that's in the owner's manual. So underneath this vehicle, along the bottom of the body, is what we would call a pinch weld. I'm trying to shine some light on this right now with my flashlight. So right here there's a dimple, and right there's a dimple, and so this jack is going to fit right between there as we raise the vehicle. Now again, this is in your owner's manual. If you're not comfortable doing this, my suggestion would be to call and get some help. You could call a repair facility, you could call a tow truck. One word of caution, you want to make sure that you're on stable ground, right? A solid footing for this jack. It doesn't have a lot of surface area, so you don't want to be in loose gravel or in dirt. Ideally, you want to be on concrete, asphalt, something like that. And just want to make sure the vehicle is as stable as possible. If you have something to block the front wheels, put something in front of and behind the front wheel to prevent the car from rocking, that would help. In this case, I'm on flat level ground, so I'm just going to put the jack under here and I'm going to start lifting it up. Now I can adjust this by hand, so I'll just raise it up and put it as close to that, raise it up as close as I can, like so. Once I've taken up all the slack, then I'll have to, of course, use the handle and start to raise the vehicle with the handle. I'm going to crank this until I take the weight off of this wheel. So I'm trying to raise the vehicle just enough to get this wheel off the ground. Obviously, I want to keep the vehicle as stable as possible, so I don't want to go too high, but just so I can rotate that wheel and get it off. So that should be enough. So I can rotate the wheel. Depending on how loose I got the lug nuts, I may have to use the wrench to loosen them. Then it's just a matter of unthreading each of them. You do want to try and make sure you keep these clean. So you don't want to set them down in a bunch of dirt and end up getting dirt inside on the threads. Because if debris gets stuck between the threads in this lug nut and the threads in that lug stud, it's going to be very difficult to thread them back on, and in some cases you could damage the threads. We don't want to do that. Again, I have the benefit of being on a nice clean concrete floor, so we're going to gently lift the wheel off. Sometimes they don't come off that easily. In this case, I'm going to put the spare on just to go through the motions and show you what that would look like. So I'll go grab my spare. So the spare will just lift into place. I want to put all my lug nuts back on, and again, I should be able to do this by hand if all of the threads are clean. You don't want to put lubricant on these because that could affect torquing them properly. We don't want a wheel coming loose. That's the worst thing that could happen, is a wheel comes loose. So I'm just going to snug them all up by hand. I'm going to take it one step further. I'm just going to tighten them as tight as I can get them with the lug nut or the lug wrench up in the air. And just double check. I'll go through each of them again. Okay, so now I've got them snug down. Would I call that tight? Absolutely not. What I want to do now is I want to lower the jack down just to the point where this tire is making contact with the ground. All I'm trying to do at this point is prevent this wheel from spinning as I try to tighten the lug nuts. If I don't put enough weight on this wheel, then the whole wheel assembly will spin as I try and tighten it. So I'm going to try and just gently set some weight down. I want to tighten the lug nuts with the vehicle still on the jack and this wheel just touching the ground. And the reason for that is we've got a hub flange with all of our lug studs, coming out of it. That's what the wheel slips over, and then the lug nuts go onto those studs and we tighten it down. If we have too much weight on it when we're trying to tighten those lug nuts, what happens is the weight of the vehicle on that wheel will tend to pull the wheel away from that hub flange and maybe doesn't sit there square. So by having it up in the air and just setting the tire down, it's nice and flat, nice and square, and then I'm going to tighten them down in that position. I'll double check them again when I get it on the ground, but I want to make sure that everything sits squarely and sits flat together. So I'm going to lower it down again just until I take the weight off and can no longer spin the wheel. So right here, the jack is still supporting the weight of the vehicle, at least this corner of the vehicle. I shouldn't be able to spin the wheel at this point. There I can get it tight. So again, take advantage of your body weight. Just kind of push, lean into it. Now these lugs are 76 foot-pounds. That's not a ton of torque. But you can see, I talked about the stability of the vehicle. As I do this, you can see the vehicle moving. So you got to be aware of that. If it slips off the jack, that's a problem. You want to gently apply pressure to get them all tight. And you want to go around, start with this one, skip one, go to the second one, skip one, go to the second. And we're just going to do this alternating pattern so we get nice, even tightening. What I don't want to do is tighten one all the way as tight as I can possibly get it, and then do the next one as tight as I can get it. I want to gently apply even pressure across all of these lug nuts as I tighten them. So I'm going to tighten them in stages. I'm going to take it one step further. Because I'm in an automotive repair facility, I have access to what's known as a torque wrench, and so I'm going to torque these wheels. If you were doing this on the side of the road, obviously you wouldn't have a torque wrench. So I would suggest once you get to the service, to a shop or place to get your tire repaired, have them check the lug nuts. They're probably going to be taking this off and putting another tire on your rim, or repairing your tire, putting a plug in it, patching it. It just depends on where the puncture is, assuming that there's a puncture. In some cases, the wheel has just totally blown apart, the tire. So, and in some extreme cases, if you've driven on a flat long enough, the rim itself can be damaged beyond repair. So that's where the judgment of a repair facility comes in. They'll know what they can put, what kind of shape the wheel needs to be in for them to be able to safely put another tire on that wheel. And again, this is for limited mileage usage only. So you don't want to drive on this for months. You really just want to drive on this long enough to get you someplace where you can get that original tire repaired or replaced. So again, be aware of the stability. If you are not comfortable with any of this, there's nothing wrong with calling for some help. You can call the shop that you normally go to. If they can't come out, then they will certainly send somebody out, a tow truck or somebody to either change your tire or to pick your vehicle up and bring it to the shop. But the biggest concern here is safety. You want to make sure, again, you're on level, solid ground, and that you're feeling comfortable that you can do this. If you can't, by all means, call for some help. There is nothing wrong with that. So I am going to lower it down off of the jack and just do my final tightening. There we go. So the weight is off the vehicle. Again, I'm just going to put my body weight into this, tighten each one last time. And that should be good. So now I'm actually going to take this wheel back off because I need to put the original wheel on the car. In the back of the service manual, it has tire size and inflation pressures, but down below it also has wheel nut torque. And so this particular wheel is 76 foot-pounds. So I've got my torque wrench set to 76 foot-pounds, and I'm going to tighten these lug nuts in an alternating pattern. That click is 76 foot-pounds. Now I can take the weight off of the jack. That will put all of the vehicle weight back on the tire itself, and I can take the jack out and put it away. Again, there's nothing saying you have to do this yourself. If you're not comfortable doing so, by all means, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. If you're in a situation where you're not sure if the vehicle is on stable enough ground, the safest thing to do is going to be to call a towing company or call the shop that you would normally take your vehicle to and have them come out and assist you, or they will send somebody out to assist you. You don't want to put yourself in harm's way. If you don't feel safe doing it, don't do it. Call for some help. There's nothing wrong with calling for help. Another thing worth mentioning is the spare tire and its tire pressure. Often that tire gets overlooked when we're checking all of our tire pressures. So you'll want to have either check it yourself. You have to pull it out of the vehicle and flip it over because the valve stem, the way it sits in the car, is facing down and you can't get to it. But at some point, whether it be when you get your oil changed or your tires rotated, you want somebody to check that spare, because you want it to be full when you need to use it. And if nobody is ever checking it, that tire can slowly leak over time, and when you do actually need it, it can be flat. So again, when you're checking the other tires, it's a good idea to check the spare tire pressure as well. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to put this all back together. I just wanted to kind of quickly give you an overview. Very, very basic maintenance on a vehicle. Another thing to check would be all of your lights. Make sure they're all working. That becomes a safety issue as well. You want both headlights working. You want all of your tail lights and your turn signals working. And if those bulbs are burned out, you've got a couple choices. Typically, the owner's manual will guide you through replacing them. If you're not comfortable with it, or can't make sense out of the owner's manual, by all means, call your local shop. They'd be more than happy to help you, help replace that bulb, replenish fluids, things like that. So again, hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching.